we say, are you happy? And if they respond yes, then we say they're happy. And if they say no, we say they're not happy. And if they do something else, then we don't know. So we say to some guy that's crying, are you happy? Yes. But he looks unhappy. He's crying. He's exhibiting behaviors associated with other people who say they're not happy. But by this definition, by this operational definition of happiness, that person was happy. But now we know what it means, don't we? We know how to go about checking this statement. All bachelors are happy. How would we check this? This is an empirical statement. Do you think it's a posteriori true, or do you think it's a posteriori false? I think it's a posteriori false, because I've checked it. What do you do to check it? Well, you can ask bachelor number 1. Human, male. We've got to first make sure that they're human, that they're male, and never married. All right? So we find these human males never married, and you ask them, are you happy? And the first one says yes. You ask the next one, are you happy? The first, yes. And then you get to one who says no. The statement must be false, right? Because it says all bachelors are happy. So as soon as somebody says no, that means it's a posteriori false. And that's how it comes out. Well, as you said, some bachelors are happy by this definition. Again, by this operational definition of happiness. Some bachelors are happy. A posteriori true. All you need is more than none to say yes. And it's been done, and some say yes. So this is an example of an a posteriori true statement. Any questions about that so far? So we have definitions, logical statements, empirical statements. Everybody clear on those 3 different kinds of statements? And of course, operational definition. What do we mean when we say the rat was hungry?
We do have a question.
Question, where was the question?
Oh, I was just wondering, so stipulations are statements that are neither true nor false?
In this case, the stipulation means this is how we're going to use the language.
Okay,
All right?
okay.
Now, you could stipulate a definition that disagreed with how other people used it, in which case it'd be very confusing. So you better be clear to everybody. And a person who has written books based on this is, for example, Alice in Wonderland, right? Dodgson, he also goes by the name Lewis Carroll, right? So Alice in Wonderland, he says, well, the word is going to mean nothing more than what I say it's going to mean. And if I mean it's going to mean this, then that's what it means, right? Okay, let's take an example here and see if you can figure out which type of statement it is. Suppose I said, I can fly to the sun and back in 0.01 seconds without a spaceship. Unharmed by the heat. All right, is that a definition, a logical statement, an empirical statement? Is it a priori true or a priori false or a posteriori true or a posteriori false? Why don't you think about it for a second, see if you can figure it out. Definition, Logical statement, empirical statement. If it's logical, is it a priori true or false? If it's empirical, is it a posteriori true or false? So, what kind of statement do you think that is? How many say it's a definition? How many say it's a logical statement? How many say it's a priori false? How many say it's a priori true? How many say it's a posteriori false? A posteriori true. Okay, I can do it. You want to see? Want to see it again? All right. Actually, you know how you do it. You go at night. Right, it's not a definition, and it is not a priori true, even though many people were tempted to raise their hand and say it's a priori false. It's not a priori false either. The reason you say it's a priori false is you're convinced it's false. You don't need any more evidence. But your arguments that it's false are based on all kinds of ideas that are not part of the definition. Okay, well, the sun is what you see in the sky. How far away is it? You're saying, oh, it's 93 million miles away. How do you know? Because other people made observations and told you. And you've learned that based on empirical evidence that people made. So, oh, nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. And it would take light to go 93 million miles. Why, that would take 8 minutes for light to get there. And you can't accelerate to a speed, and nothing can go faster than the speed of light. And besides, if you were to accelerate to a fast speed, you'd be squished flat. They'd have to shoot you out of something, so you'd be dead. So you can't do it. And it's hot. All this is based on empirical ideas, people making observations of the world. You're convinced in these observations, but it's still based on observations. So how far away the sun is, how fast that a person can't fly. It's not a definition of a person. If a person could fly, you'd say, wow, there's a person who could fly. You wouldn't say, oh, that's not a human. You just say, wow, that person figured out how to fly. At one point they thought nobody will ever be able to fly, even with an airplane. Can't be done. We'll get into that in just a bit, what's called possibility. But people change their minds. So if a person could fly, all of a sudden you had a person who could fly, a Superman kind of person. You wouldn't say, oh, that's not a person. You just say, well, there's a person that can fly. So you're not going to change it's not part of the definitions to rule this out. So it is not a priori false. It is a posteriori false. So this is an empirical statement. And it's a posteriori false, and it's based on evidence. And the evidence has already been collected, and you believe it already based on what other people have done. Other people have convinced you that nothing can travel faster than the speed of light, that humans can't accelerate to speeds like that without being killed, that people would be killed by the heat, that the sun is really hot. All these various properties as empirical knowledge. Okay, any questions about this example? There are lots of other examples that you can do. You should think through those. All right. Let's talk about different kinds of possibilities now. There's what's known as logically possible. There's empirical possibility. And there's technical possibility. What's logically possible? Again, by logically possible, I mean consistent with logic. It is not logically possible for a bachelor to be married. Okay? So it is logically possible that I could fly to the sun and back. Even though not what your common everyday use of the word logic. That's not logical, Captain, is Mr. Spock. Right? Dr. Spock's the guy that wrote the book about child care in the 60s. A lot of editions. Dr. Spock's book, Taking Care of Babies. Mr. Spock is on the Star Trek, right? He's the one that's always saying, "That's not logical, Captain. The Romulans wouldn't attack us under these conditions." Well, he uses the word logical. He doesn't use it right. That's the trouble with Star Trek. You don't want to get your information and everything. There's a lot of good ideas in Star Trek, like those phones that flip open that are now out of date. A lot of good ideas in Star Trek, but don't get your definition of logical from them. It's logically possible that I could fly to the sun and back. So it's logically possible. That's logically possible. But for a bachelor to be married, that's logically impossible. Bachelor can't be married. It's logically impossible. Logically possible for a bachelor to fly to the sun and back in 0.01 seconds. It's not logically possible for a bachelor to be married. It's empirically impossible for me to fly to the sun and back, or for a bachelor to fly to the sun and back. Empirical means, so logically possible means consistent with definitions and logic. And again, by logic I mean rules for reasoned thought. That I'll be giving you a couple of logical principles in this class. You can take a course on logic and set theory later. A lot of courses where you'll go into that deeper. We'll do a little bit of it in this class, a little bit of logic. The empirical statement, for something to be empirically possible, it means it's consistent with the laws of nature. And we think it's empirically impossible to fly to the sun and back, so we think it's probably impossible to fly to the sun in 0.01 seconds. All right. For a person to do that without a spaceship or any other type of device, right? Now, when I say we think, we never know for sure the laws of nature. We have beliefs about the laws of nature. We're not really sure about the laws of nature. They're always being tested and checked. We're always learning new things. We don't know what's empirically. We know what's logically possible. We don't always know what's empirically possible. Is it empirically possible to cure HIV? Is it consistent with the laws of nature? We don't really know. Technically possible. Let me define that, and we'll come back and talk more about what's technically possible. Means it's consistent with current technology. It's not technically possible to cure HIV. What is HIV? For those that don't know, that's the human immunodeficiency virus. That's the virus that causes AIDS. So if you acquire this virus and it gets going in your body long enough, eventually it'll produce a condition called the acquired immune deficiency syndrome. Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, AIDS. And what happens when a person gets AIDS? Well, their immune system becomes weakened. And so diseases that normally your body can fight off. You're being exposed to bacteria and funguses and viruses all the time. And normally your body can fight these things off. If your immune system is healthy, you get exposed to these diseases, but the body fights them off and you're okay. But when your immune system is bad, then all of a sudden bacteria that a healthy person wouldn't bother a healthy person, or viruses that wouldn't bother a healthy person, can suddenly become deadly. person exposed to a cat that has AIDS, the diseases that a cat carries, that normal humans could live happily with a cat and not get sick. But a person with AIDS can acquire a disease from a cat that can kill him. And so a person with this condition will develop, certain kinds of pneumonias that'll kill you pretty quickly, and other diseases. If they've already got tuberculosis, they already have, other diseases, other bacterial or viral infections can kill them. So it's bad news. Now, can they cure HIV?
Not yet.
Not yet. Is it empirically possible to cure it? Means that what you're saying is, would someday somebody create a cure? Maybe. Do you think someday there will be a shot you could get to prevent it? An immunization? You think that's possible, to create an injection? How about Ebola? Can they cure? Is it technically possible to cure Ebola? Not yet. We don't know how to cure Ebola. It's killing about half to 2/3 of the people that get it. Right now, at the current time, there's probably less than 10,000 people with Ebola in the world. You could cure all those people, get rid of the virus completely, wouldn't have to worry about it. But right now, if you acquire the disease, it can kill you. Maybe 50-50, maybe 2/3 of the people that get it can kill you. Do you think someday they will be able to create something to cure people who have it? Maybe, but we don't know. Don't know if it's empirically possible or impossible. It hasn't been done yet, so we don't know if it's possible. There are a lot of people who believe it's possible, so they're working on it. Is it possible to get an antibiotic to treat certain gram-negative antibiotic-resistant drugs that bacteria? We have diseases. MRSA is one of them. Methicillin-resistant staphylococcus. Methicillin-resistant staphylococcus aureus is a common bacterium that most antibiotics don't work against. Is anybody working on how to cure that? Unfortunately, no. Why not? Because we have a profit-oriented medical system. We have a for-profit medical system in this country. The last drug companies that were working on it gave it up because they said, it's not profitable to cure somebody and save their life. What happens? You sell them one bottle of pills, they live. They don't need another bottle of pills. Why should we spend a lot of money trying to develop drugs like that, where you get $20 one time and the person saves a life? So they gave up doing research on that. Kills 100,000 people a year in the U.S. A lot of people are worried about terrorists. There aren't very many terrorists killing anybody in the country. People are worried about Ebola. We've only had a few people in this country die of Ebola, and a few people in the world, really, Ebola. But MRSA, you should be worrying about MRSA, 100,000 a year. 10 million died in the last, over 10 million Americans died of MRSA already. 1 million in the last 10 years. All right, so what's empirically possible isn't always known. That's what's consistent with the laws of nature. It's not possible to fly to the sun and back in 0.01 seconds. And if it's empirically impossible, we're saying it'll never be technically possible. If it's logically impossible, it doesn't even make sense to say it's empirically possible. So if it's logically impossible, it's not going to be empirically possible. And if it's not empirically possible, you're saying it'll never be technically possible. But if it's technically possible, then it's empirically possible. So if it's technically possible, it's empirically possible. And if it's empirically possible, it's logically possible, or wouldn't it make sense to talk about it? Everybody clear on the relationships between logical, technical, and empirical possibility? Any questions about that? Okay. We don't always know what's empirically possible. At different times in history, it's been thought. A human will never be able to operate a motor vehicle going more than 45 miles an hour because you're not strong enough to steer or operate the brakes. You come up with power steering and power brakes. Now most of you drove with more than 45 miles an hour to get here at some point in your drive or rode in a vehicle that went. So they used to think, you know, it might not be possible. People don't have fast enough reaction times to respond, but now they built equipment to make it possible. So what's thought to be empirically possible changes. At one time it was thought you could take sulfur and lead and put them together and create gold. Is that possible? No. Now you know lead and sulfur, there's no way to put sulfur and lead together to get gold. Is there a way to change lead into gold? Yes, but it's more expensive than gold. You can bombard it with neutrons until you build it up to have enough protons and neutrons to become gold. So that becomes possible, but that's only through a nuclear fusion reaction available only under very expensive conditions. All right, that's it for today. We'll see you next time.